As winter 2025 deepens, a diplomatic storm brews over Eastern Europe, not on the battlefield, but in the corridors of power from Washington to Kiev and Moscow. The world watches as the chill in the air is matched by the frostiness of international relations, with every capital city calculating its next move. The stakes are enormous, and the pressure is mounting on all sides. The threat of a US-Russian ultimatum loomed, pressuring Ukraine toward a pre-packaged peace deal that would reward Russian aggression and reshape Europe's security for decades. Behind closed doors, American and Russian negotiators draft proposals that could redraw borders and set dangerous precedents, while Ukrainian officials brace for the consequences. The world's superpowers seem determined to force a resolution, regardless of the cost to Ukraine's sovereignty. Ukraine, with key European partners, pushed back, refusing to legitimize territorial conquest. European leaders aware of the long-term risks stand shoulder to shoulder with Kiev, determined not to let history repeat itself. Their message is clear: peace cannot come at the expense of justice or freedom. President Zelensky, working with Berlin, Paris, and London, orchestrated a countermove, enlisting U.S. Senator Marco Rubio to disrupt a Kremlin-backed proposal. This coalition, spanning continents and political divides, signals a new phase in the diplomatic struggle. Zelensky's strategy is bold: to rally Western unity and expose the dangers of appeasement. This resistance bought Kiev crucial time and shifted the narrative away from a quick, imposed settlement. Ukrainian officials use every available channel, media, diplomacy, and public appeals, to make their case to the world, emphasizing the stakes for all of Europe. European leaders, wary of Washington's impatience, have taken a more assertive stance, inviting the U.S. to Berlin for a critical, uncertain summit on ceasefire strategy. The upcoming meeting is fraught with tension, as leaders debate not just the future of Ukraine, but the very principles of international order. Ukraine and its allies insist that any resolution must be just and sustainable, not a temporary pause dictated by outsiders. They demand guarantees for Ukraine's security and sovereignty, and a process that includes Ukrainian voices at every stage. The diplomatic environment remains tense and unpredictable, with every meeting carrying global consequences. As the world holds its breath, the outcome of these negotiations will shape not only Ukraine's future, but the fate of Europe and the rules of the international system for years to come. Ukraine and its European allies have set a clear strategy: ceasefire first, politics later. No talks on elections or territory until hostilities fully stop and robust, legally binding security guarantees are in place, lessons learned from past failures. Only then will Ukraine consider elections or referendums on issues like Donbass. This approach directly counters U.S. proposals for Ukrainian withdrawal, while Russian troops remain. Zelensky has offered elections within 60 to 90 days, but only if security is guaranteed. The goal isn't immediate settlement, but to regain control of the diplomatic process and ensure any peace is built on security, not coercion. Ukraine's stance reframes the debate. A just peace cannot be built on ongoing violence. The White House's push for a rapid end to the war is driven not only by humanitarian concerns, but also by powerful economic ambitions that are shaping the administration's strategy behind closed doors. As the conflict drags on, the pressure to find a solution grows, with policymakers eyeing opportunities for American influence in the post-war landscape. The Trump administration has quietly drafted plans to unlock and redirect $200 billion in frozen Russian assets, channeling them into Ukraine's reconstruction. At the center of this effort are major U.S. financial firms, poised to manage and profit from the massive flow of capital. This unprecedented move would not only reshape Ukraine's future, but also cement America's role as a key architect of the country's recovery. This vision of post-war rebuilding promises enormous profits and expanded influence for American business, creating a powerful incentive to favor a quick settlement, even if it means making difficult compromises. For Wall Street and Washington alike, the prospect of leading Ukraine's reconstruction is as much about strategic advantage as it is about economic gain. Key proponents like real estate mogul Steve Witkoff and former White House advisor Jared Kushner, both backed by deep-pocketed Gulf state investments, are leading the charge. Their involvement blurs the lines between business and diplomacy, as they leverage their networks to rally support and secure lucrative deals, all while presenting their efforts as essential to peace. Witkoff is set to meet with President Zelensky and top European leaders in Berlin, underscoring how private interests are now at the very heart of international peacemaking. These meetings highlight the growing influence of business leaders in shaping the future of Ukraine, often operating alongside or even ahead of traditional diplomats. Europeans, however, remain deeply wary of a plan that seems to prioritize U.S. interests and a rapid normalization with Russia. Many European officials fear that such an approach could undermine their own security concerns and long-term vision for the region. The EU has its own ideas for the frozen assets, with internal disagreements surfacing over how best to use the funds. Some advocate for a more cautious, justice-oriented approach, while others push for immediate economic relief for Ukraine. Many observers see the U.S. approach as bypassing tough questions of justice, accountability, and long-term security. As the debate intensifies, the world watches to see whether economic interests will ultimately outweigh the demands for a just and lasting peace. Economic interests are fueling back-channel talks between American and Russian entities, despite ongoing sanctions and mounting political tensions. Reports suggest major U.S. and Russian firms, including ExxonMobil and Rosneft, are actively exploring future joint projects, undeterred by the current climate. Two major Trump donors have reportedly contacted Putin's inner circle, signaling business interests that remain close to the heart of U.S. power. Plans to revive Nord Stream pipelines are being discussed, reflecting a growing belief in an imminent settlement between the two sides. Moscow sees potential allies in U.S. business circles, hoping to leverage these influential ties for sanctions relief and a more favorable deal. Money and influence now form a shadowy second front in the ongoing war, shaping outcomes behind closed doors. Ukraine is countering economic pressure with its own diplomatic offensive. Zelensky's team is engaging directly with U.S. financiers and policymakers, including Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, Jared Kushner, and BlackRock's Larry Fink. Their message: Ukraine welcomes investment, but only after a ceasefire and security are secured. By promising future economic opportunity, Kyiv gives U.S. interests a stake in a real, lasting peace. The argument: a rushed deal creates risk, but a secure Ukraine is good for business. This approach reframes Ukraine as a pragmatic partner, not an obstacle. The goal: tie reconstruction to security, not surrender. Inside the Trump administration, a fierce and often hidden battle rages over the future of Ukraine. This is not just a policy disagreement, it's a fundamental clash over America's role in the world and what values should guide its foreign policy. Behind closed doors, officials debate, strategize, and sometimes even leak information to sway public opinion and influence the president's decisions. The U.S. government is deeply divided. On one side, a faction led by influential figures like Steve Witkoff, Jared Kushner, and Senator J.D. Vance pushes for Ukrainian concessions and a quick peace. They argue that the U.S. has already spent too much, financially and militarily, and that it's time to put American interests first, even if that means pressuring Ukraine to accept a less-than-ideal settlement. Their strategy is pragmatic, focused on ending the conflict swiftly to reduce U.S. involvement and costs. They believe a rapid resolution, even at Ukraine's expense, will allow America to redirect resources to domestic priorities and other global challenges. Opposing them is a determined pro-Ukraine coalition: Senator Marco Rubio, key administration officials, and experienced career diplomats who see any deal that favors Moscow as a betrayal of American principles and a dangerous precedent for global security. This group draws its strength from the State Department, the military, and the intelligence community. They are committed to resisting Russian aggression, believing that standing firm with Ukraine is essential to upholding the international order and deterring future threats. Around the world, allies and adversaries alike are watching closely, searching for any sign of which side will ultimately prevail in Washington's internal struggle. The stakes are high, and the outcome will send ripples far beyond Ukraine's borders. If the Vance faction succeeds, the U.S. could dramatically scale back intelligence sharing and arms shipments to Ukraine, leaving Kyiv with fewer options and potentially forcing it to negotiate on Russia's terms. Such a shift would reshape the balance of power in Eastern Europe. Ultimately, the outcome of this internal American struggle may decide Ukraine's fate more than any battle on the ground. The world waits, knowing that the decisions made in Washington could alter the course of history for years to come. Russia's push for a swift resolution is driven by desperation, not strength. Its military campaign has stalled, less than 1% of new territory gained in 2025, at a cost of nearly 400,000 casualties. The key objective, Pokrovsk, remains out of reach after 17 months of fighting. Sanctions and war costs have crippled Russia's economy. Oil revenues have dropped 33% this year, with worse expected. Ukrainian strikes have further damaged Russian infrastructure, including oil tankers in the Black Sea. Facing military exhaustion and economic crisis, Moscow is racing to force a deal before its position worsens. The Kremlin hopes to leverage political influence in Washington while it still holds ground in Ukraine. Its loud calls for surrender are the desperate gambits of a power running out of time.